I highly doubt that Anna Kasparian has really and truly left the left, but I do think that this little meltdown was pretty daggone revealing, especially given the fact that, once again, we're here to talk about New York City's bail reform and how it is that they don't believe in keeping criminals locked up.
This isn't real. This isn't real. So I looked it up. It's real, guys. It's real. Listen, if being on the left means supporting this, then I'm not on the left, and I'm okay with me.
Look, guys.
Insane. You guys are insane. Anyone who thinks this is okay is insane. And everyone else in New York has to suffer the consequences of this with random bag checks at the subway by National Guard.
As many of you guys know, I've been doing a lot of videos on New York, a lot of videos on Chicago, the migrant situation, the crime situation, the subway situation, and of course, I've done a lot of videos on Anna Kasparian when Anna Kasparian literally has somewhat of a W. Now, I wouldn't call this for a W, I wouldn't call this an L, I wouldn't call this anything at all except somebody who's obviously pissed off and beginning to feel the exact same pain that a lot of people who live in the city of New York are in fact feeling. Now, I'm going to save the whole shtick about voting and this, that, and the other until the very end because, of course, you guys are probably wondering why it is that Joy Behar, for whatever reason, chose to actually ask New York Governor Kathy Hochul some tough questions, which, of course, we will get to here in a second. And don't worry, I'll be explaining that more so towards the end of the video because during this little meltdown that Anna had, I'm pretty sure she's going to have a much, much larger meltdown when she actually sees the real truth of why it is that Joy Behar and The View suddenly decide to take it. Let's just say they suddenly decide to hold or ask a lib tough questions. But with that right there being said, let's go ahead.
Troops into the subway system. But since the pandemic, you have done a wonderful job. Overall crime is down in the city.
Yes, it is.
So my question to you is why now? Why deploy into the subway? And how do you respond to some of your fellow Democrats calling the move theatrics that play into Republican narratives that blue cities are poorly run war zones?
I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. My job is to keep people safe. I have to keep, any way I can, I'm going to keep New Yorkers safe. And I'll tell you who does show appreciation for the people out there on the streets. I've been walking the streets. I walk into business. People are just saying, thank you for taking such strong action. Now, the subways have been safer, but we had a spike recently.
Yes.
A 45% increase in subway crimes. Now, these are high-profile crimes.
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah.
Because the CEO of the MTA says that 1% of subway suspects are responsible for more than 20% of the crime because of New York's bail reform laws, which allows them to go back out there and commit more crimes.
I think we all know that that line of crap right there that Sonny Hostin threw at Kathy Hochul was in fact crap, but I don't think that right there is the real meat of the video, especially given the fact that when we get deeper in this, you'll see exactly how full of crap these people really and truly are. Now, that right there was a segment on TYT of The View, and of course you guys can obviously hear Sonny Hostin giving praise to the governor of New York. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, well, she's the governor of New York, not the actual mayor of New York. You know, Eric Adams, the guy who basically says, look, I'm running a sanctuary city. And of course, the other day he decided to put this little nugget here out.
Our city has been managing an ongoing humanitarian crisis, providing shelter and care to approximately 183,000 new arrivals, a number that is larger than the population of most cities. But we have been clear since day one that the right to shelter was never intended to apply to large-scale migrant populations arriving without housing or legal work status in such a short period of time.
But we will get to that more so in video number 2 for tomorrow because obviously there's a situation in Chicago, and obviously I'm going to be linking Chicago and New York together because we're going to be talking about the migrant crisis one more time because apparently a disease has broken out. I call that. And of course, to go on top of that there, things are getting pretty well out of hand in those areas, a lot more than what they normally are. But back to the topic at hand. So basically, when someone like, say, Kathy Hochul or another lib goes on a show like, say, The View, they typically tend to be very plush with said individual. They don't ask them any hard questions. They don't press them on anything. And of course, if you've been paying attention to this channel, and of course you've been paying attention to a lot of other channels out there that talk about New York City and Chicago and the bigger cities of the country, New York City now has National Guard patrolling the subways, meaning that there are people, members of the National Guard, being sent to subway tunnels because, as many of you may know, especially if you're from New York, subway is like one of the chief means of transportation within the city. Everybody's got to deal with subway crime at some point in time, and the crime, of course, is in fact heating up. Now, this right here obviously is in contradiction to what Sonny Hostin was saying just now, but still, we've been talking about this issue for a while. The crime denial is absolutely hilarious. I have really no idea where to start, or even I don't even know the word even used to describe it. But obviously, if you live in New York City, you are obviously feeling the pain of massive subway crime. You're obviously feeling the pain of the migration crisis. By the way, something you guys voted for when you voted for Joe Biden. Just figured I'd point that out there, but we'll get more so towards that towards the end of the video. But the thing is this right here. New York City is beginning to look like an absolute war zone, and one of the main reasons why it's looking like an absolute war zone is because District Attorney Alvin Bragg is not exactly, how do I say, prosecuting said criminals. And of course, these are policies that people like Jink and Anna push for years. Now, I want to go ahead and say this now before we go any further. Jink, you have spent years radicalizing your audience into believing that defund the police, progressive bail reform policies. By the way, some of these people who are getting released on bail, some of these people will eventually go on to commit other crimes in other states. For example, I'll give you a few right now. The guy who killed Laken Riley. That guy was actually in New York City in 2022. He was arrested in New York City. He was let go because apparently the jail was too full, and he ended up in Georgia, where he would eventually kill the young nursing school student. By the way, same said individual, his wife was also a migrant who was also committing a crime, his brother too. Oh yeah, there's another situation too involving a killer in the Roosevelt Hotel who somehow ended up in Arizona. I did a video on that one too. The state of Arizona is not releasing that guy back to New York because they obviously can see that the District Attorney of New York, Alvin Bragg, does not do his job or doesn't want to do his job. It's one of those porous-backed attorneys. Got to say it in a very odd way. Then you also get the, how do I say, oh yeah, that's right. You get the guys who beat the hell out of those NYPD officers. Two of those guys end up in Arizona. Basically, the point is that if you commit a crime in New York, you're basically allowed to get away with it. You're basically allowed to go scot-free, and this also includes the matter that we're about to talk about in this case, which of course could get this video age restricted, but I'm going to try to be as algorithmically as friendly as possible. So when you hear Jink run his mouth and say stuff like this.
In New York, and this needs to be fixed immediately, and this is not about any reform that happened recently, the judges cannot take the violence of the crime into account. They can only take into account whether the person is going to flee or not. Well, that makes no sense. So, okay, well, I don't think that serial killer is going to flee. He really likes, Rochester. Okay, so he's gonna stay put, so I'm gonna let him go back home. What? So in New York law, there's to be fair, serial killers is an exception actually, because there's only a couple of super extreme crimes where they could take that into account. But other than that, you commit a very violent crime and the judge is not allowed to consider it when he's looking at whether to give you bail or not.
Can I give you an example? Yeah. Actually, it's an extreme example that Joy Behar confronted Governor Hochul about, and it's in this next clip. Let's watch that real quick.
Just know right away that once again, it's just another grift. Jake Unger has been pushing for this crap for years. He's been pushing for this type of no policing for pretty much the last 7 or 8 years. But funny thing about those 7 to 8 years, because we'll be bringing this back up a little bit more so towards the end of the video, because of course Jink is going to weigh in once again, and of course we got to put him in his place and we got to remind him of the policies that he at one point in time actually really and truly wanted. Now, with that right there being said, let's go ahead and get to the Joy Behar segment.
MTA says that 1% of subway suspects are responsible for more than 20% of the crime because of New York's bail reform laws, which allows them to go back out there and commit more crimes. But there was just a crime on Long Island where body parts were found all over Long Island. They had 4 suspects. They let them go. And now they're out there still. So what is the deal here? It sounds insane to me.
Though the crime that was brought was not what was bail eligible. Yes, murder is. Yes, conspiracy to commit murder is. Yes, assault is bail eligible. All those are. I know that the DA is working really hard with the Suffolk County Police Department to build the case they need to bring the charges that are necessary. The charges he brought, he did not have enough evidence at time to
So
hold
you can't hold them?
Not on the charges he brought.
No, you have to
But those
have
are low-level charges. They really weren't. And we can work to make those bail eligible in the next session.
Dismembering a corpse and hiding a corpse after dismembering it, not bail eligible, not a serious crime. I'm not even kidding, guys. Like when Joy Behar outlined that case, I was like, she's crazy. This isn't a thing. This isn't real. This isn't real. So I looked it up. It's real, guys. It's real. Listen, if being on the left means supporting this, then I'm not on the left and I'm okay.
I'll get to Anna's statement right there at the very end in a second, but let me go ahead and address Behar. Stunning. That's actually shocking that Joy Behar would ask Kathy Hochul about what's going on in New York and actually point out the fact that subway crime is ridiculous. Point out the fact that the National Guard is being used. By the way, a lot of the National Guard there in New York, they're not armed, which makes me wonder why it is that they're there. They're doing checkpoints, of course, and they're checking people's bags. They're checking old people's bags. And of course, I made a video about this very recently saying that the best thing the city of New York could do is just simply allow people to execute their right to use the Second Amendment. Meaning if you just allow people to have a pistol or have a weapon on them to be able to defend themselves, then a lot of the crime would in fact go down. Like I said before, the crime denial is absolutely ridiculous coming from the left. But of course, if you live in New York City, or if you live in Chicago, or if you live in one of these very, very blue cities, even some of the blue cities in red states, chances are you have been confronted with a crime at some point in time. But here's where this entire situation really and truly gets interesting. You see, Anna, and I mentioned this earlier, she's been getting a little bit more and more red-pilled on the migrant situation, and also not just the migrant situation, but she's also been getting a little bit more and more red-pilled when it comes to the topic of crime. I mean, the woman did get jumped by a homeless person a few years ago, so obviously she does have some personal experience in this area. But she's also attacked the media recently as well. And while it is that The View is not exactly what we call media or the mainstream media, they definitely operate in a way to do the mainstream media's business, or they're doing with the cackling hens that actually work on that show. That right there being Behar, Whoopi Goldberg, which is really weird to me, how it is that two women with so much venom and anger in their system have names like Joy and Whoopi. It's very, very strange to me, but let's continue on. Now, with that right there being said, I'm showing you guys some thumbnails, okay? These are thumbnails from, all you got to do is just go to YouTube and type in New York City subway dismemberment, because apparently there was a crime recently where they found a couple of bodies that were completely and totally dismembered. You know, it's funny too, because one of these thumbnails says that a leg was found in a subway, an actual human leg. It seems to me like you have multiple Jeffrey Dahmers who live in the city of New York. I'm talking about Manhattan, Bronx. I'm talking about Queens. I'm talking about there's a situation in Flushing. Don't worry, we're going to get to the squatter situation on Friday, because that's actually getting out of hand. And it could lead to something that, quite frankly, I've been saying it could eventually happen. But then again, that we also got this other guy on the platform that wears a beanie who says that vigilantes are coming back and is a little bit hyperbolic. We'll do it on Friday. The point is this right here. The crime in New York City, as you guys know, is absolutely out of control. And of course, there's this little case that's been looming in the city of New York about a couple or a family. I'll just say that it's an elderly couple. I use the term family because obviously they do have family. They're obviously together, being found dead, but not only dead, but without any limbs.
One of the four suspects facing charges in connection to body parts found in a park in Suffolk County is now back behind bars. 40-year-old Amanda Wallace was arrested Friday night in Lindenhurst for allegedly stealing beauty products from a CVS. She's now being held without bail for violating her bond conditions in the body parts case. Wallace and 3 others are charged with concealment of a human corpse and tampering with physical evidence after body parts belonging to a man and a woman were found in Babylon and Bethpage. None of the suspects has been charged with the murder of those 2.
Like I said, you've got literal Jeffrey Dahmers walking around in the city of New York. It's absolutely insane. It's absolutely crazy. Like I said before, this video right here could get age restricted, but still at the same time, though, this is obviously some pretty brutal subject matter that's being talked about here, because obviously it happens. Now, I showed you guys the thumbnails, at least in the B-roll footage, because I got to be honest with you, trying to find this specific case through YouTube was actually a kind of a problem. The reason why I went to YouTube was obviously to get you guys the clip of the news itself, because I typically don't tend to read the article while doing this. I'll probably change that over the course of the year with the webcam, the computer, and all that stuff there. But then again, I'm also going into essays too, but we'll figure that out later date. The point is this right here. People who live in New York are fed up with this. They're tired of it. And of course, there are people out there who help push the narrative, help push the defund the police thing, help push the whole abolish the police, help push all the rampant crime that we're seeing today, and then turn right back around tonight. But there are a few of them out there who really and truly have had enough of this. Now, guys, this next one right here is going to run a little bit longer. I'm just giving you a bit of a heads up. A lot of things have got to be discussed here, and a lot of things have got to go in detail. But let me go ahead and say this right here. If there's one thing that this New York bail situation has, in fact, exposed, is it's showing you exactly how many criminals are repeat offenders. Which is kind of weird, too, especially given the fact that the people who dismembered this couple, a few of these people had been arrested multiple times, and one person was even let go and then turned right back around after being let go, would eventually go on to commit another crime. I'm pretty sure you guys are probably thinking shoplifting, but of course it wouldn't surprise anybody if it was something else. But let's watch this. Now, guys, there's more to discuss here, okay? There's a lot more in this case, which we'll get to here in a second, because that clip right there, while it did run relatively long, about a minute, there's another section of this video that's about 2 minutes and 30 seconds that we'll get to here in a second. But I want you to pay not so much close attention to Anna here. Pay much, much closer to Jink here.
Dismembering a corpse and hiding a corpse after dismembering it. Not bail eligible. Not a serious crime. I'm not even kidding, guys. Like, when Joy Behar outlined that case, I was like, she's crazy. This isn't a thing. This isn't real. This isn't real. So I looked it up. It's real, guys. It's real. Listen, if being on the left means supporting this, then I'm not on the left, and I'm okay with that. So let me give you the details of the case.
It doesn't mean that.
Okay, details.
On the left. We're all on the left. We don't want people dismembering folks getting released. Only a couple of lunatic.
Some do.
I know. What I was in the middle of saying is only a couple of lunatic activists are like, yeah, we're pro dismemberment guys being let go. Okay, whatever.
These
You
poor
don't represent the left
criminals
at all.
Dismembered bodies. It's so unfair to put them in prison. Okay.
Wow, Jink. I mean, it's almost like you're trying to say that, like, not everybody on the left, well, they damn sure voted this way. It's almost like he's trying to cling to this right here, and Anna's saying, well, this right here is what the left is about, then quite frankly, I don't want to be a part of the left anymore. Come fight me on this right here. I think what's going on is that Anna has seen enough. Now, I'm not saying that Anna Kasparian is going to be going to the right or anything like that. I'm saying that Anna Kasparian is fed up with the left. I mean, this right here is the same woman who got in trouble, got called a TERF. This was the same woman who got attacked by her own over race issues. She got attacked by her own over the homeless situation, which, by the way, as I mentioned before, she was attacked by a homeless individual, something that, quite frankly, liberals in California constantly vote for because they can't get that situation under control. You're about to see New York go through the exact same thing as well as Chicago. They already are to a certain extent, but it's about to get way worse. When you factor that in with the migrant situation, the fact that New York City has gotten rid of their sanitation department temporarily, it shouldn't be surprising to anybody that measles is going to pop up, seeing how it is that's the case in Chicago, but we'll talk about that in the second video tomorrow. Fact of the matter is that you can obviously see that Anna Kasparian has had enough of this. Now, I want to go ahead and give you guys my personal thoughts on these two individuals before we go any further, because obviously the meltdown reveals a lot. Now, let me go ahead and give that. Cenk Uygur is nothing more than a grifter. Okay, I kind of alluded to this. I said the past 8 years earlier in this video. That's what he is. He's a bad actor. He's definitely a guy on the left. He's definitely a progressive. And, of course, he also claims he was a former Republican, which I find very, very odd. The truth about Cenk is this right here. Anytime you have a conversation or you ever see Cenk get into a debate, whether it be that debate he had on Piers Morgan recently with the rabbi from Israel or Douglas Murray, the only thing he did was just scream bigot. He did the exact same thing when he got into his discussion with Tim Pool when he went on the IRL. He also loves to misrepresent people's positions all the time. I'm pretty sure someday I will be misrepresented by Cenk Uygur, and I'll probably just laugh at it, because at that point in time, by the time I get big, which will probably be years from now, he'll probably not be relevant anymore. People have already passed him by. Cenk Uygur's constant grift has radicalized his audience into believing that these people can just do whatever and not be held accountable. So in a lot of ways, anytime Cenk Uygur says what the hell he just said about people on the left and nobody on the left wants this, I got no choice but to kind of laugh at that and not take him serious. Now, in the case of Anna, on the other hand, she's obviously worked with Cenk for a long time. She's obviously helped push the policies, but I don't think Anna fully knew what the hell she was getting involved in. If you actually look at her background, yes, she grew up kind of pleasured, or at least a pleasureful lifestyle. She grew up in a suburban area, wealthy family. She hasn't actually seen this. I think the difference between her versus Cenk's nephew, Hassan Piker, who, by the way, lives in a multi-million-dollar mansion in Southern California, outside of LA, away from the crime areas. Obviously, the stuff that they push is the stuff that they ain't got to deal with. Truth be told is, I mean, the only thing Hassan Piker is a champagne socialist. Definitely be him and Cenk, for the most part, just good old-fashioned grifters. Where Anna, on the other hand, I think is starting to actually see the true era of what she's been pushing. And guess what? She's not liking it too good. But that still remains another whole 2 minutes and 38 seconds of explanation here that needs to be gone through. And I'm going to let Anna read it out fully so that way you guys can see exactly how bad the city of New York is when it comes to the topic of bail reform, and, of course, exactly how brutal this little crime was.
% right. And rather than tweaking the bail reform in order to do something about a tiny group of people that's causing all this chaos on the subway system, Kathy Hochul has decided to instead basically use up all these resources to do something that's ineffective and makes people uncomfortable, which was the deployment of National Guard troops. And just to give you some more information on what Behar was referencing there, MTA CEO Jono Lieber said 38 people were arrested for crimes against transit employees last year, and those suspects had over 600 prior arrests. Citing NYPD data, Lieber said 1% of subway suspects were responsible for well over 20% of the crime. There's also been some studies that have more data about this. For instance, the elimination of money bail increased recidivism for people charged with nonviolent felonies, with recent criminal history, and with a recent violent felony arrest. And while it decreased recidivism for people charged with misdemeanors and people with no recent criminal history, difference in how bail reform worked when it comes to recidivism. And by the way, this is a study that was done by John Jay College, their Data Collaborative for Justice. And keep in mind, this is not some right-wing organization. These are the very people who have been pushing for criminal justice reform. And so they're studying what the impact of bail reform in New York has been. And they found that it has increased recidivism for certain people. The reduced use of bail for legally eligible cases tended to increase recidivism among people charged with violent felonies and people with a recent arrest. The starkest and most consistent recidivism increases across both research designs were among people with a recent prior violent felony arrest and among people currently charged with violent felonies who had a recent criminal history. And so the same study, by the way, found that 67% of defendants who had a recent prior felony arrest in the past year and then were released with no cash bail were rearrested within 2 years of their arraignment. Almost half, 49%, were rearrested for a felony. And I should note again that this is data that's been collected by a group of people who absolutely love the bail reform and love the criminal justice reform. It's just that they're doing their due diligence in keeping track of how it's actually played out for New York.
Now, that was a lot to take in. And what I'm going to say is, if you think I've got a bit of a nonchalant attitude about this in this video, the reason why is this here. Go back to what I said earlier. When you go to YouTube and you type in New York City subway dismemberment, you get a lot of different thumbnails of a lot of different crimes of stabbings and people like losing limbs. I mean, holy crap, it was one hell of a case to try to find. It's almost like they have a serial killer network going on in the city of New York. It's like you got multiple ones all working together. That's how bad the situation is. And also, to go on top of this, New York City's bail issue. I mean, dude, when you arrest somebody, you lock them up, you keep them locked up. If there's certain crimes that, quite frankly, and this right here is a crime where these people obviously need to be locked up. I mean, pretty much common sense here. I mean, after a while, when you keep letting people go, of course, they're going to reoffend. Of course, they're going to do more and more crimes. Now, look, I'm all about rehabilitation for certain people, but there are obviously certain crimes out there that, quite frankly, you just can't let somebody back out into the open for. Murder is one of those, okay? I mean, child molestation, you need to be locked up for good. You can't be let out if you've been hurting kids and stuff, which, by the way, I'm not going to say it here because the video will, in fact, get age restricted if I do. But the point is this right here. These are the policies that Cenk Uygur pushed for years. Anna Kasparian also helped push them for years. The difference is that Cenk is still trying to hold on to the notion that I'm a part of the left and we're not really and truly like this and we're not really and truly about this, when in reality, he's been pushing this crap for years. So, yes, I do believe that this meltdown of hers that you're about to see was 100% genuine.
What are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing, Cenk? What are we doing? What are we doing? Someone tell me, what the F are we doing?
Yeah, look, no one signed up for this. I don't know how the hell any of these laws passed. I went to every progressive conference there was over the last 20 years. I never heard a single person saying, why don't we let the actual criminals go? Hey, if someone butchers someone and chops them up into little pieces, let's do the kind of criminal justice reform where they would be able to walk out free.
Yeah, come at me right now and tell me I'm the bad guy, because I want these people who dismembered corpses and tried to conceal the evidence in prison. Come at me and tell me I'm the bad guy. Come at me.
Look, guys.
Insane. You guys are insane. Anyone who thinks this is okay is insane. And everyone else in New York has to suffer the consequences of this with random bag checks at the subway by National Guard.
What's happened is that Anna, like I said before, she is beginning to see that the whole progressive grift is only done one thing and one thing only. The only thing it's done is cause misery. She can obviously see that the people who live in New York have obviously voted for this and they're obviously putting up with this, and obviously they're in definitely some form of pain. Everything that was being said there is exactly what New Yorkers are feeling. Now, I'm not doing this video to blast the city of New York. I'm really just blasting the leadership. But those of you who vote for this stuff, this is kind of the environment that you kind of wanted. This is the kind of the environment that you asked for. You asked for the disillusionment of order when you decide to vote straight Democrat or keep voting for the policies that aren't exactly tough on crime. You did this. And to go on top of this, the whole Trump situation with Letitia James and the judgment was laid, that right there is going to screw up New York for years, probably decades, maybe even the rest of the century, because it sets an extremely bad precedent for business owners in the city of New York. It's not just the crime. It's not just the bail reform, which just lets people out. I mean, you've got Rikers, you've got Green, you got a lot of jails, a lot of prisons out there. You mean to tell me that you can't keep people locked up? It's absolutely insane. And Anna, of course, has obviously gotten fed up with this. But here's the thing. As I said before, you asked for it. You voted for this. You asked for it. Now, if you're willing to admit that you got it wrong, if you're willing to say, hey, look, I screwed this up. Look, man, I want this. I mean, look, you're dealing with the migrant crisis, defund the police, bail bull crap. You got people dismembering one another, killing each other, and cutting off legs, limbs, and God knows what else. You've also got, I mean, look, the Bronx Zoo is now officially the Fool Zoo. Okay? It's the whole city is now a complete zoo of all kinds of chaos. That right there is what this is. These people pushed the chaos. They wanted the chaos for years. But at least one person in the group, specifically Anna Kasparian, has finally seen that this chaos is not exactly good for this nation or good for this environment. And yes, New Yorkers are feeling it. But there is one more thing that I need to say, okay, before I close this video off, because I think this right here is really the most important thing that nobody even talked about. And I understand that dismemberment and crime is obviously very, very big and needs to be discussed, because obviously we have a lot of sick people out in the world. And we also have a lot of sick lying grifters like Cenk Uygur who pushed these policies for years, but now all of a sudden want to back up against them. But then again, though, he'll pick them right back up when the whole thing is convenient for him. He also dropped out of the presidential race too. I wanted to make fun of him about it, but I chose not to. Here's the sad reality of it. Anna was recently, like a year ago, attacking leftist media, attacking the left-wingers who are influencers who run their mouth about wokeness, and she was basically calling them a bunch of faux wokes. I'll try to leave some videos in the description box, but here's what Anna does not yet know, and I'm pretty sure it's probably going to set her off, assuming she's a true believer in that side of the aisle's cause, which I don't think she is anymore. And here's the thing. The only reason why it is that Joy Behar asked Kathy Hochul some tough questions, or somewhat tough questions, is because it's an election year. They have to put on a face, they have to put on a bit of a front, they have to ask one of the tough questions when the rubber meets the road. Meanwhile, even though she only asked some tough questions for that one segment, everybody already knows that Kathy Hochul is getting a pass, as well as as well as Eric Adams. Fact of the matter is, the only reason why Kathy Hochul was even asked any tough questions at all is quite literally because it's all, once again, very, very political. The politics is all they care about. People like The View are nothing more than an extension of the mainstream media. And you just wait and see what happens when Anna finally has that meltdown, because I think that right there will be the one that ultimately does it. So no, I don't think Anna has fully left the left yet or anything like that. But of course, she's getting much, much closer to it. With that right there being said, guys, please hit the like button. Please subscribe. Please have a comment in the comment section. And I'll see you guys later.